Hello and welcome back to the channel. Today I'll be reviewing and going over my favorite parts of Season 1 and touch on what I think the show did well and where I think the show struggled. Overall, I'm really happy with the first season. And the first highlight in my eyes is the character of Will Downing and his entire storyline. His character is based on the role of Yoon Tian-ming, and I thought everything about it was great. Not only was the actor very good, but out of all of the characters we spent time with, his storyline had the most heart, and I loved all of it. Because we get to spend time with him throughout all of the first season, it added a lot of emotional impact for me. His character also had the most moments of foreshadowing and Easter eggs. When he is teaching class in episode 2, he says, "When your consciousness ends in one world, it could continue to exist in another world," which carries over to the Staircase Project. Just because his body dies on Earth, maybe his consciousness in space can be awoken by the technology of the San-Ti. In episode 3, after he has a surgery, he says, "It turns out the cancer isn't inherently evil, it's actually just looking for a place to live," which speaks to the nature of the San-Ti. And a few moments later, the topic of Raj comes up, and Will, being high on narcotics, says he is death, he is chaos, which makes me really excited to see the direction of Raj's story in the future. In episode 4, Will reads a book of fairy tales gifted to him by Jin with the inscription, "May our stories be happier than these." Then in episode 6, where he tells Jin about his illness, she makes little origami boats that he retreats into within his mind like a safe space. His whole story was done beautifully. I think it was a big improvement to Yoon Tian-ming in a way that it translates for television. The segment where he enters the building to buy the star for Jin broke me. When he stops in front of a screen where different cultures and nationalities of Earth are playing, and he stops to look at it, it said so much without using any dialogue. Whoever chose the Lana Del Rey song that played in the background couldn't have picked a more perfect choice. It was so well done and shows his compassion, his ambivalence about his own mortality, and really speaks to his character. I think he might be the best adapted character of season 1. I also remember there being talk of the showrunners going back to film extra scenes, which delayed the show by a couple of months, and I have to wonder if it was all of the segments of Will in the origami boat. If that was the case, I think it was absolutely worth it. The next highlight for me was Saul's Wallfacer plot. This is a book favorite moment for me as well, so it's not surprising that I like it in this show, but it really had the same tone as it does in the books. The confusion he has, paired with the undercurrents of humor, where every time he says, "I quit, I am no longer a Wallfacer," everyone is just like, sure, assuming it could all be a part of his Wallfacer plan, which left him essentially trapped within the position whether he wants to do it or not. I know some critics thought the pacing towards the end of the season was too slow or didn't have enough action in comparison to the first half, but I thought the last 3 episodes were the superior ones. Sure, I loved watching the attack on Judgment Day, but the attention to the Staircase Project and the Wallfacer Project sets so much up for the road ahead, and it ties all the characters together through the loss of Will and his sacrifice for humanity. And Saul is a big character in this series, and you can see that it sets up the base for the next idea on how to defeat the San-Ti. I also liked the new spin on the conversation between Wenjie and Saul. To some people, the conversation could have seemed like a waste of time, adding to what they consider slower pacing towards the end, and I think this is why the show is so risky to produce. Many events seem inconsequential, but eventually become foundational to the story, and most of them don't have payoff until much later down the road. But the Wallfacer summit and assassination attempts on Saul's life felt like a perfect way to end the first season. The Santee are afraid of Saul and they want him dead in a similar way they were intimidated by Augie's nanotech, which led to her being targeted by the Sophons. This whole setup gave me a lot of assurance that if we get a next season, Saul is going to be a standout character. The next part of season 1 that I think was handled really well was the addition of Tatiana. It's not easy to invent a new character and make their storyline worthwhile, but something the story did need was a human antagonist. I think showing her being wiped away from the CCTV footage was a nice way to show the capabilities of the Santee's advanced technology in a way that even a layperson could understand. Her character also shows just how creepy Mike Evans' cult, the ETO, is. They are essentially religious zealots, and Tatiana drives that home. The scene where she confronts Yao Wenjie in China was a very nice way to show multiple things. One, that Yao Wenjie was correct in her theory that hasn't yet been revealed in the season, and two, that there is now a second phase to the Santee's plan. Saul was almost killed by a sniper, and Tatiana is now doing the same type of work. So just because the Santee have cut off ties with the ETO, they will still need human allies, and that is represented really well via Tatiana. The next part of season 1 that I think was done really well is the way they showed how tragedies and trauma shape the future for all of humanity. The historical trauma of the Cultural Revolution sets Yao Wenjie on a path that dooms Earth. Augie witnessing a technology that she hoped would make Earth a better place was used for destruction, leaving a big opportunity for her character to come back and focus on ways to help humanity in a way that doesn't use any violence. I could actually see her character being merged with Book 3 aspects of Chung Xing. The sacrifice of will is going to set up everyone close to him to examine ethical dilemmas and make them hesitant to pull the trigger on projects that could help defeat the Santee and cause the death of others. The collective trauma of the Santee led them to search out a new home and then later realize their Earth allies can't be trusted, causing a ripple effect. Thematically, everything works really well here to be built upon for future development of the story. And that's something that I'm really looking forward to, considering how much of the story was fast-tracked. The last big thing that I enjoyed was the use of Little Red Riding Hood as a foil to the Santee. Book readers obviously have an attachment to fairy tales, but the TV show built upon it as a way to invent a plot that shows the Santee's weakness and humanity's advantage. The Santee's way of communicating is done by interpreting information straightforward in a literal manner without the capability for interpreting symbolic or metaphorical meanings. As soon as Wade understands this, he comes up with a Wallfacer plan because if there's one thing humans can do and do well, it's deception. This also leaves an opening where humans can slip messages and things that Sophons can't detect because they don't really understand our methods of communication in terms of humor, lies, and deception. In the books, the reason the Trisolarans allow the destruction of Judgment Day is a bit different. Mike Evans knows something that the aliens regret making him privy to, and in the context of season 1, that information hasn't been explained. If I had to guess, they are saving it for the foundation of season 2, which I think is actually a good idea because it sets up a big concept that will be weighty enough to base a whole season around. letting it slip in season 1 would be a mistake because, as we've seen, there wouldn't have been enough time to give it the attention it deserves. So the communication between Mike Evans and Vasanti about the wolf pretending to be grandmother is a pretty great way to show why the aliens abandon Evans and sets up a new avenue of weaponizing something that comes so natural to humanity. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is a critique. Three Body Problem hit the same wall as some other adaptations in the fact that 8 episodes make it difficult to get the nuance of the books. I could see how some non-book readers would think the season was perhaps a little slow in pacing, but for me it felt like a sledgehammer jumping from one plot beat to the next. And I say this understanding that 8 episodes isn't something that the showrunners are asking for, but what the streaming platform allows. It stripped some elements of the characters down, specifically Dashi, or Clarence as he's called in the show. I would have happily savored a whole episode focusing on the plan of using Augie's nanowire to destroy the ship Judgment Day, which is a segment where Clarence absolutely steals the show, but instead we got a couple of lines of dialogue and then it's off to the races and we are slicing a ship. Overall, this isn't even a real criticism of how the show is made because it's typically outside the control of the producers, directors, and writers. It's just the most obvious issue with the adaptation because it's so incredibly different from the slow burn of the books, where the tension is built as new concepts and roadblocks trickle through the story. But overall, I am pretty happy with the show, and now that I've watched it, I can see where they are taking things, which makes me really hopeful season 2 gets greenlit. It's a very strong season considering how much of the story it covers, and that aspect, I think it is very successful. That covers my review for season 1, and if you enjoyed the video, show it some love by liking it and subscribe to the channel. I'll be back with more 3 Body Problem content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you back next time.